German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is making a two-day trip to the Middle East, where he's due to hold talks with the leaders of Jordan and Israel. His trip comes as international efforts to get aid into Gaza are expanding. Germany has joined an emergency airlift, dropping food over the Strip for the first time. A new maritime aid corridor between Cyprus and Gaza is also taking shape. But relief groups and the people of Gaza say it's nowhere near enough.
The U.S. Air Force parachuting aid into Gaza. They're dropping food supplied by Jordan to help hundreds of thousands of people facing starvation. The situation's awful. We can't eat or drink, and aid is very scarce. Israel has imposed a long-running blockade on Gaza and has been accused by aid agencies of delaying the entry of trucks. Israel says it is carrying out necessary security measures to ensure no weapons are snuck in. And while trucks wait for inspection, the price of food in the territory is skyrocketing. Amid all the shortages, many can no longer afford to shop for groceries. Everything's expensive in the markets. The prices are very high. I've been checking the market for an hour. I have 10 shekels and I can't buy anything. In recent days, more donor countries have turned to the air and sea to overcome Israeli restrictions. A ship carrying 200 tons of food reached Gaza in the first such delivery made via a new maritime aid corridor. And more are on the way. But Gazans say the measures are only a temporary fix.
We keep waiting for aid. This is not a solution, whether by ship or by plane. We saw planes dropping aid and people fighting over it. There are some children who drowned in the sea trying to get the aid.
A group of 25 leading human rights organizations have also criticized the air and sea deliveries. They say a permanent ceasefire and unhindered access to aid through land crossings are the only way to alleviate the unfolding humanitarian crisis.
Before the German Chancellor left for the Middle East, he repeated his call for a swift ceasefire. And he also outlined the overarching agenda for his journey. Let's have a listen.
We have a difficult situation. It's necessary for aid to reach Gaza on a larger scale now. That will be an issue that I also have to talk about. We're also concerned about the further progress of military developments. In particular, there is a danger that a full-scale offensive in Rafah will result in a great many civilian casualties, which must be avoided at all costs.
And following the German Chancellor's trip to Jordan and Israel is our correspondent Tanya Kramer, who joins us now from Jerusalem. Tanya, good to see you. So tell us a bit more about what Chancellor Scholz is hoping to achieve through these talks in Jordan and Israel.
Well, I think you have to see this is his second visit to the region since October 7 and the war. He came shortly after October 7 to Israel and showing his full support for Israel also in its war efforts. But now, of course, we're in a different phase of this war, going into the 6 months with over 31,000 people killed in Gaza, according to the local health authorities there, and the UN warning of hunger and starvation, a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. So this is, of course, also when we're hearing more of the other world leaders also being more critical of Israel's war conduct, including US President Joe Biden, Israel's closest ally. So, of course, it will be what Chancellor Olaf Scholz is saying here to his Israeli counterparts. One of the main concerns is, and we heard it there, are Israel's preparations for a potential military offensive in Rafah, where over 1 million Palestinians have sheltered while the war is going on, while there are also airstrikes in the area. Another concern is the return return of the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza. We understand that the Chancellor will also meet some relatives of those families, and also, of course, more humanitarian aid that needs to go into Gaza. This is a demand by many in the international community, and that is also why Germany is now taking part in those aid drops. And that is part, of course, of the discussions in Jordan. This is the first leg of his very, very short trip. He arrived last night in Jordan and will meet King Abdullah during the morning hours.
Yeah, and Tanya, you mentioned these plans for a military operation in Rafah, the focus of much international concern. But as you reported, Israel's war cabinet approved these plans, and yet we are still hearing at the same time that there are preparations to resume ceasefire talks on a possible hostage deal with Hamas. What's the latest you can tell us about this?
Yeah, there are many conflicting reports here also in the Israeli media. We understand that Hamas had submitted its proposal on Thursday last week. Then we had Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling those demands by Hamas unrealistic. Nevertheless, the cabinet there decided to send an Israeli delegation to Doha, to Qatar, to continue those talks. And there are reports now that this delegation should be leaving anytime soon. It will be headed by the head of the Mossad, David Barnea. There's also another cabinet meeting scheduled for some time today to outline the Israeli position. So we understand that, of course, this is going on. So the talks have not completely broken down. It would be also the first time in weeks that an Israeli delegation will take part in those indirect talks. Now, of course, this proposal was seen in several phases, releasing first about 40 of the hostages that are still in Gaza, the women, elderly children, also hostages that are ill, in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. But I mean, the main sticking points were always the demands by Hamas, the full withdrawal of Israeli forces, also the return of residents to northern Gaza, as well as a full ceasefire. So we have to wait and see. There's a lot of course, pressure also by the Israeli public to come to such an agreement, but we have to wait and see, how this will unfold and to understand how wide the gaps are or how narrow the gaps are between the two sides.
That was DW's Tanya Kramer in Jerusalem. Tanya, thanks as always for your reporting. We appreciate it.